The second thing I want to read is from Semezdin Mehmedinović. Mehmedinović was born in Tuzla in 1960. He is one of Bosnia's most prominent poets and writers, and he's best known to an English-speaking audience for his 1993 collection of poems and prose fragments, Sarajevo Blues, which was published in translation as Sarajevo Blues by City Lights in 1998. He, his wife, and their son left Bosnia and came to the US as political refugees in 1996, and Mehmedinović chronicled this journey in a text entitled Ruski kompjuter, or Soviet Computer. In 2011, the Massachusetts Review published an excerpt from this text, Soviet Computer, and in fact, it was the first place to publish anything from this text in any language. So I'll read several excerpts from this excerpt, which was published in the MR, starting with the prologue. So, Prologue, the Sixth City. At this very moment, somewhere in the world, someone is leaving their home, determined to find a better place for themselves. They are leaving a world that has nothing left to offer them, although, as John Berger has put it, there is nothing there except their everything. For me, this departure is an echo. It strikes me as the memory of an event that I understand fully only in retrospect. In late 1995, I did not think I was leaving Sarajevo to find a new place to settle. Instead, I left as a tourist, convinced that I would return as soon as my wanderlust was spent. Today, as I reread what I wrote at that time, I discover in the language, in its layer that betrays the subconscious, that my departure was, first and foremost, a quest for a new place I could recognize as my own. This text is the result of that misunderstanding. It is an unintended journal of my relocation, composed in the period from late August 95 to August 96, tracing my path from Sarajevo to Prague to Zagreb to Phoenix to New York to Phoenix to Washington, D.C. I came to a stop at the Sixth City. The fate of this text was unusual. I outlined ideas as material for newspaper articles on an old laptop that literally died on me in the summer of '96. I'd made a backup on one of those old floppy disks, but computers that could read floppies soon became obsolete. So the text was inaccessible for over 10 years. This past May, a technician who came to replace my computer at work mentioned floppy disks and that he still had an old computer at home that could read them. I asked him to retrieve this text from the disk, and he did. Now, reading this almost forgotten text, I feel as if I'm looking at old photographs whose existence I forgot about in the meantime. The text was originally significantly longer, as I had saved everything that I wrote during that year in a single document, outlines for stories, poems, letters, magazine articles, etc. Once I pared it down, I was left with a text consistent by virtue of the fact that it is, if nothing else, chronological. My psychological state at the time this text was written bears special mention. Although I was not aware of it at the time, or at least I cannot recall this desire, it seems obvious now that leaving Sarajevo after the war was, among other things, the expression of a desire to give up literature. Why did I repeatedly state that after I found my place in the new and unfamiliar world, I hoped that I'd give up writing? I tried to answer this question in the past few months, but got no further than recognizing my lack of responsibility towards that which has been written down. I easily give up on a text and lose manuscripts with even more ease. I take joy in writing, but for the most part, I'm ambivalent about publishing. So the question arises, should this text be published? If the answer is yes, there's only one reason. This book was written for a single reader, and that reader is myself, because it contains all the answers I need. I wrote it while asking myself, where am I going? In the end, apparently by accident, I answered the question, where did I come from? So I will read now from the first section, which is Sarajevo. In the end of the summer of 1995, the weather is mostly good, and there is more sun than we need. I recorded an interview with Juan Goytisolo. I asked a question, and he began his answer with the sentence, The first bomb that fell in Barcelona killed my mother. He paused, and then he spoke for the next 2 hours, without leaving any space for a follow-up question. A ray of light traveled from his face to his socks, touched the tip of his shoes, went out of the window, and the room went dark. He stopped talking when he could no longer discern a conversation partner. On the way to dinner, he told me that this war is practically over. I asked him, "How do you know?" "I know," he said. "Today in Soros, Hrvo je miro zdravko and I said, "Juan Goitisolo told me that the war is practically over. This means that my services to the city are no longer needed." We were sitting at a table, a glass of šljivovica in front of each of us. I drank one, and then another, and then just one more. The entire time, a full glass sat on the table in front of Zdravko, and he didn't even touch it. When we were leaving, he downed it in one gulp, and afterwards he spoke like a drunken man. On the way out, he followed us mumbling, "His services to the city, his services to the city." Kamaka stopped by to show me his new photographs. He photographed open spaces in the town where people understandably do not like to linger because they are exposed to snipers. During the shooting, the shutter stayed open for a long time, 4 or 5 seconds, so that all the moving subjects have been speeded up to a point of no recognition. They have become movement itself, in flight from our gaze. Non-material subjects, bodies of fog. That's how it is. Those who exist in a state of constant disappearance, those who believe in the dream of invisibility, will survive. For that reason, these are the ultimate anti-war photographs. In any case, it's peaceful these days and people aren't dying. Still, there are a few foreign photographers waiting at intersections in hope that they'll catch the death of a passerby. They turn the subject into an object. There's an obvious similarity between the gaze of the sniper and the gaze of these photographers, an interest in the same object and repetition of the same mechanical actions. Together, they produce death. So, skipping ahead a few months and across an ocean, I will now read from the section entitled Phoenix, as in Phoenix, Arizona. I have hooked up my Zenith computer after exchanging the European plug for an American one. When the current fell, the text on the screen blinked and threatened to disappear. Sometimes the image is full of static, like the live broadcast of the World Cup in Mexico on our black and white TV long ago in 1970. Our building is mostly populated by Bosnians and their demons. Today, an old woman from the apartment across knocked on our door. She brought us a portable TV as a gift. She said that she'd arrived here from Banja Luka with her entire family, husband, son, his wife, and kids. I hooked up the TV, black and white. The local morning show was on. They were broadcasting shots of dead bodies in the Sonoran Desert, Mexican illegal immigrants filmed from a TV helicopter. This was followed by a conversation in the studio with the basketball player Charles Barkley. They talked about the problem of illegal immigration, and during the commercial breaks, a happy jingle, "Good Morning Arizona," was played. I thanked the old woman for the gift, and she said, "We don't need it, and you might find it entertaining." Sonya bought a photograph in an antique shop, which we framed, and it's now hanging on our wall. It's a photograph of a girl walking out of a dark passageway. On her right, there's a fountain on the facade. The girl is wearing a white summer dress and holding a straw hat in her hands. She looks a lot like Sonya. I remember that white dress on her, as well as the straw hat. But the photograph was taken over half a century ago. This is not Sonya. But now that the photograph is on the wall, to me it is a portrait of Sonya, taken long before her birth. Namik drove me to the Borders bookstore at the corner of 24th Street and Camelback. I spent a little bit of time in the bookstore in the section with the foreign press, and I was very happy to discover the Sarajevo magazine Svijet on one of the shelves. We had coffee as Namik leafed through Svijet. He stopped on a page and said, "It's you." And really, there was a photograph of me accompanying a text by Alma Lazarevska. There was also a photograph of Nikola Koljevich. He'd come down to the city and was standing on Tito Street. At first, I was happy to see my photograph, but then I felt dispirited. The man who had set the books in the National Library on fire was in Sarajevo, and I was on the other side of the world looking for books about Sarajevo. It's Saturday and very warm. We can sit outdoors in the cafe only thanks to the pumps under the awnings sprinkling a fine, cool mist of water on us. It feels very comfortable. Thank you.